Welcome back to another Union Arena Deck Tech. Today we're joined by Hyperactive Gremlin, and we're taking a closer look at one of the new archetypes in JJK, Red Sorcerers. This deck thrives off 4K body spam and battle positioning. It's fast, fairly explosive, and when piloted well, it can make your opponent feel like it is impossible to profitably trade or chump block through the turns. So, let's start off by understanding what this deck is all about. Would you describe the identity of Red Sorcerers as aggro or something more nuanced?
I would describe the identity of Red Sorcerers specifically as a tempo deck, but without necessary control tools, and that it aims to create huge swing turns with bodies and/or resources to force chump blocks, but it really only does so by pure board advantage or card advantage, without any real necessary removal outside of Nobara's drop effect, or obviously the Black Flash.
So what kind of openings do you usually look for in a deck like this? What are you trying to set up early and do?
The main thing you're trying to set up to do is to play lots of, threatening cards like Mei and Gojo. And how to do that is that your first turn should be aiming on setting up enough energy so that you can play lots of your 2-gens, being this 3-drop Yuji or this 2-drop Inumaki.
So, which parts of the deck form the foundation that you want in every matchup? What is you feel secure and set up if you get these cards into play?
There's a couple cards that you definitely want to see in every game. That is the 4-drop Gojo, the 3-drop Yuji, and then you definitely want to see Mini Mechamaru. And the reason for that is that the 4-drop Gojo, he's your main pressure tool, and he's your main way to grab your other pieces of the combo, and or your other raids, your other bodies to summon off of this event. And then the Yuji, he's your best 2-drop. He's a 3K, and potentially later in the game, he can become a 4K, and he can become a 4K with impact. But his main utility is being just a decently statted body with 2-gen that you can get pretty early out, since a lot of the stuff in this deck that are like super important are either 4 or 5 drops. And then for Mini Mechamaru, this card is a little bit weird. The reason I like it so much is because it plays 2 things basically for free. It draws you a card. It's great for board advantage. If you want to, you could basically just use it as a setup tool, fill your energy line, and then push them up later. But it's just generally a really good card specifically for this type of nuanced tempo.
So can we talk about the specific synergy that Gojo has with Mini Mechamaru? Because 5 costs for a card it doesn't seem really that valuable until you realize the benefit of having Gojo in the deck.
Yes, so Gojo's main thing is that he is a 5K with impact that is not a raid, but I suppose his advantages is that he's great for pressure. You could use him to block, but his main downside is that at the end of your opponent's attack phase, if they have 2 or more cards with 4,000 BP or a Suguru Gato on their front line, he removes himself. And then after he removes himself, he looks at the top 4 cards of your deck and adds up to 2 Sorcerer Affinity cards from there to your hand. Now, why that is good is that if you play him, it forces them to use all of their resources next turn to get rid of it, and he basically guaranteed chumps 1 damage. And adding 2 perfectly fuels the Mini Mechamaru event, because this has an additional effect that if Satoru Gojo is in your removal, it drops its cost down to 2. So what you can do is you can basically push up everything after your Gojo is dead, play this for 2 energy, fill up your energy line again, get more cards.
And there's quite a few of these pretty good 2-cost and lower or 3-cost and lower cards inside of this deck for you to really profit off. I like that card a lot. What are your favorite buffing characters in this deck, since it does seem to have a lot of different options to slowly buff up your board quite a little bit?
I would say that the buff cards you really want to see are Mei, which buffs herself to a 5k on your turn, and then Nobara, which once per turn you can pitch something from your hand to give another sorcerer on your field 500, which might not seem like a lot, but when paired with a bunch of these cards that buff themselves, it could stack up really easily. And especially with a card like Yuji that reduces his own BP for value, it could be really good late game.
Wonderful. So let's talk about the rest of this deck, shall we? So we haven't really touched on Yuji Itadori all that much, other than his color trigger card. Can we go over this Raider and what makes this card so unique inside of Union Arena?
What makes Yuji unique is that his effect allows him to have a variety, I guess a couple options on how you want to vary your attack. In that when he attacks, you have the option of giving him impact, or you have the option of losing 2000 BP for him to switch to active immediately. And these two effects can be used in a variety of different ways. If you want to guarantee a damage, you gain the impact. If you want them to force something in, then you could make him reduce. If he's buffed by either Nobara or, say, the Black Flash card, he will stay a 4k, essentially. So you could just punch twice with him. He comes in active, of course. Overall, just a generally good pressure tool.
So we did touch a little bit on Black Flash, but can we go over this card? Because, 2 AP removals usually have to be pretty good. Does this one keep up with that?
I would say that Black Flash, most of the time, is a regular removal spell. And although it is 2 AP, it reduces its AP cost by 1 if you have a Yuji on the field, which usually you are aiming to do, so most of the time it's going to be a 4-1. And the effect is, as you'd expect, it sidelines something with 5,000 or less, but the additional effect is that if the opponent has 2 or more cards with 4,000 BP on their front line, you can give a sorcerer on your field plus 2,000 BP, which could be useful, especially for the Yuji effect to punch again.
Now, if you don't have the Yuji, how many cards in this deck can profitably become lethal attackers, 4K or bigger attackers, if you have Black Flash comboing with them?
The amount of cards that could become good, well, obviously the 3-drop Yuji, the Nobara, and the Mei, those are your main pressure tools. But Gojo, of course, he doesn't really need the buff, but if push comes to shove, you can also give it to him. There are cards like Kusakabe that would actually benefit from it, since his effect is he cannot be targeted by abilities of cards with 4,000 or more BP. So if you give him the 2,000 boost, he'll become a 5k that's immune to stuff. That said, like Nobara, I suppose it would be able to drop his BP.
Okay, and then you also have the Takuma, who would become a 45, and the 0-cost Nobara. So a lot of your cards seem to become very deadly attackers in conjunction with the Black Flash. So what kind of deck does Red Sorcerers excel against, and what gives it trouble? Which matchups do you feel super favored in, and why?
I would say that something I would feel super favored in is a slower control deck. Mostly because Gojo. If you fight a deck that can't put up a lot of 4Ks in one turn, he's going to just stay there forever and be a constant free damage every single turn. And if you have 2, that's essentially game over for a lot of decks. But something that I guess this deck also thrives against is a deck that takes a longer time to set up. Most control decks can't really keep up with the pace, especially if you get Mini Mechamaru out and you just spam the field. They can't keep up with all those attacks, even if they aren't necessarily strong bodies.
And what are the types of decks that you think slow you down and punish you for your 4K spamming ability and your Gojo being a threat that you rely on in this?
I would say a really hard matchup would be a deck like Blue JJK, being that they could essentially put up a 4K every single turn. So your Gojo's probably not going to live very long, and he's going to at most be a 1-turn blocker. But any deck really that could buff their own cards or set up 4Ks is going to be a little bit of trouble, since you're not going to get a lot of value off of being on field.
So what adaptations in types of matchups like that do you think this deck needs to take? What are some specific lines they need to look for if they're up against a deck that can spam 4Ks quicker than you can spam Gojos?
If they could spam 4Ks quicker than you could spam Gojos, I would say that your best bet is to focus on cards like Yuji or Mei. Because these cards, they don't necessarily rely on your others to be good, and they're just generally good stuff to push up that apply pressure by themselves. Gojo, while he is a good card, if he dies too much, you can filter through your deck really easily, fill up a bunch of these mini Mechamaru cards, and then just start spamming the field with stuff like Mei that can also boost themselves to a 5K.
So, if someone is new to Red Sorcerers, what's the first thing they should learn about piloting this deck well?
I would say the first thing you need to do is to plan out what cards go where, because sometimes you will be clogged and sometimes you need pressure, but other times you really want spaces open for the next few turns. And what I mean by that is really planning what you want to summon off of cards like Mini Mechamaru, or really planning how much you want to push up this and the next turn, just so that you could have enough space for your real threats like Gojo or Mei.
Okay, so do you think this archetypes has any room to really tech into some additional cards, depending on how the meta may shift? Are there any other cards that you think this deck could potentially add in if people are feeling flavorful or their local metas might be a little different?
A card I could definitely see putting in instead of Kusakabe, depending on your local scene, would be the 2-cost Yuji that has Step and Nullify Impact. While it has no trigger, it is definitely a better thing to have a lot of Yujis, but unless your locals has a lot of cards that have impact, or you're going to get a lot of value out of the Step in matchups, then I don't really see including it.
So, do you have any final tips for anyone who might be trying to stay ahead of the curve by playing this deck?
The tips I would have is to focus on the pressure. If you let up from it for even a few turns, they're going to have enough resources to really punish you if you play your Gojos out. So I would say you really need to focus on getting the opponent on the back end. I wouldn't be afraid to push up small bodies. I wouldn't be afraid of spamming some 1s and 0s. I would just generally focus on making sure that the opponent has all of their attention on stuff that isn't exactly him.
All right, so thanks again, Hyperactive Gremlin, for running us through this wild and fiery red deck. Red Sorcerers is definitely a deck that I'm looking forward to trying out in the near future, and one that I hope can put in a little bit of work into our meta and help reshape things, be a bit more aggressive. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're interested in watching some more Union Arena games and matches, you can see my channel, which is down in the description below. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.